In 2021, I came home after doing 27 years. It was of a life sentence. So I served 27 of that. I did 13 in the box. From 2001 to 2014, I spent in DDU at Walpole. It was this CO messing with this, this dude that was in the block. And so that night, you go to the child hall, I'm watching him. He don't sit with us. These are like Latin King cats. He go up, throw the tray at the CO behind the counter, and then I get up. When one person rolled from the table, everybody rolled. Mm-hmm. And so when I got up, that's when dudes got up behind me. It kind of went a little crazy from there. And the superintendent was involved. A couple of COs got, injured a little bit.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Bounce Back Podcast. I'm your host, B. Luke. I got a special guest with me today. So why don't you tell the people your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Eugene, but everybody know me as Spot. I was raised in Boston, part of my childhood, but I was actually born in California. My people's is from Boston.
Well, what part of Boston,
I grew up in Roxbury, Academy Homes, to be
Okay.
exact. That's my earliest, my fondest memories right there.
Okay.
But we lived all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But my memories, kind of fade
Mm-hmm.
and in and out. But my fondest memories from being around Roxbury, though.
So
Academy.
why don't you just tell the people how much time you got in the system, man, how long you been out, what you been up to, man, and just a few things on that.
So in 2021, I came home after doing 27 years. It was of a life sentence. So I served 27 of that. I did 13 in the box. From 2001 to 2014, I spent in DDU at Walpole. So, and then I came out in 2014 out of there, and then I ended parole in 2019, and I came home in 2021. So I work at Harvard, so I do that primarily. I'm a custodian over there. I've been over there for about a little over 2 years now. Do that primarily, but on the side, I do little speaking engagement with Tuppy, because I was involved with Tuppy inside. I was the first of the cohort, so shout out to my Tuppy family. Spit, who else is in there? Brazy's part of it, but he's a trade. He was Emerson, but that's still my guy right there. The rest of the guys that was in there, Rob, everybody. But yeah, Tuppy was and then when I came home, so it was Tuppy, and then when you come home, it was my turn. I did a little bit my turn. I'm still involved with the organization, so I go up there from time to time.
What's that experience like working in a place like Harvard?
So I'm actually down at the medical school down Longwood.
Oh.
And so it's weird. So being in there, you in there they got some bodies in there. They have the primates, the mice. So when I first got in there, I was working the third shift,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the third shift was from 10 to 6 in the morning. And so 6:30 in the morning, I did that for a little 2 years. And then, but I couldn't hack it no more. It was too much on the body. But I'm working in the labs, picking up,
Nice.
Maintain the lab. So now I work in the library over there, which is pretty good over there. It's pretty smooth. Everybody's kind to me, so I like it. It's pretty smooth.
That's what's it. What was it? Was it the shift that you couldn't take anymore? The overnight, man?
Yeah,
that's
the
a lot.
overnight. It's the graveyard. You got 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because
Yep.
it's not natural to be in there. You go into work sometimes. You go in at night. And you come out at night, so you're not getting that daytime, and that messes with your mental.
Yeah, they call it, what
I
is it, the circadian rhythm or something like that?
Yeah, it's like being
sleep cycles.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you like being in a box.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I had to get up off the shift.
Hey,
Health over wealth.
Yeah, you got to find what works for you, but also acknowledging what doesn't. That's a big part of, staying out and doing the right thing. So talk a little bit about, you said you were doing a life sentence. Was this a parole life sentence the whole time?
Yes, this is parole. So what happened was I'm a juvenile, so I fit under the juvenile lifer. So I was 17 when I came in, but I came in under the joint venture. So I don't know if you heard of it, but it's like the joint venture theory.
We talked about it a couple times on here, but for the people who may not know, if you could just break that down, what a joint venture is. And
so the joint venture theory is when let's say one of your partners, one of your friends or somebody, has a gun or something, a knife or something. And you're with that person at that time, and they commit a crime. And because you're there with this individual, you're considered just as guilty as him or her. You know what I mean? So
just for being there.
Yeah, so you're guilty, and that law right there is like archaic. It's like it has. I mean, I understand its purpose, but you know that's the law that when you go inside these prisons today, you'll see there's a lot of people in there under these theories. They didn't even actually do the killing.
Yeah.
But yet they still serving like some guys that I know, some dudes I know, they in there and they got natural life sentences.
More time than the actual. What do they call it? The principal or something like that?
The principal party.
Yep.
The principal party. So what happened in my case was I ended up I wasn't the principal party in my case. And so I ended up taking the plea deal for a second. And then because, you know, the circumstances kind of shifted and the blame was being pointed at me, you know, people pointing fingers at me. So I ended up copping out and the individual actually went home. The law just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it
doesn't.
Seems a little backwards, right? I'm sure you being so young, dealing with all that, it must have been a lot on your mind too, to kind of like, what the hell's going on, man? But you know, you're here now, and I'm grateful for you to come and tell your story. So, talk a little bit about growing up, right? What was the household like, man? You got any siblings? Your parents around?
So growing up, my house was weird. So I'm the baby of my mother's kids. It's 3 boys. The oldest is my brother. He did some time before too. He did like 18 years. Same kind of case. He's a life.
And what's the difference between y'all ages, the oldest and the youngest?
5 years.
Okay, so you're still pretty close.
And then my middle brother, so he's 2 years older than me. In the household was me. It was us 3, my mother and my grandmother. You know, my father, I never knew my father like that. You know, I just knew of him, and I met him a few times. It's like he just, you know,
spitting image.
Yeah, spitting image of him, right? But we never had that type of relationship. But growing up, it was like, you know, we was growing up in the city. My mother was tough, right? She went through her issues. She had her faults, her demons, but she was a good person, and so she raised us. She raised us in the way to be tough. You know, like, you know, don't take no shit, and so that kind of, you know, it hardens you in a way where you don't really get to enjoy your childhood in a sense, because once you start being exposed to certain things, and not even by her hand too, because back then you was getting whooped when you did something. You felt that. Today call it child abuse, but back then it was just the norm. Right. But you kind of become aggressive like that when you kind of, you know, you feeling that belt, you feeling the switch, you know, whatever they get their hands on. I think that was like the prelude or the precursor for, you know, later in life me entering and going down that path.
So you said your brother did some time and anything like that. What about, I know you said your father wasn't really around, but what about anybody else in the family, uncles that did time or anything like that? Because sometimes it's generational, man. And
now my father did time before.
Is that why part of the reason why he wasn't around? Same with
my father was a party, so I didn't mean to cut you.
No, it's all good.
My father was, you know, he was the ladies' man. He was a sports guy. You know? He played ball. He was the man. Beanie, they call him Beanie Jackson.
Gotcha.
He's from Boston too, and so, you know, he had a few babies' mamas, right? My mother was just one of them. To be honest with you, right? And so he had numerous kids. I have siblings from him. My sister Rob, I got a sister Robin, and a few brothers. He went to prison. And I remember this one time, right? My mother and we was coming. I think she took us to like Chow or somewhere in Dedham, somewhere, and we drove by Concord. And he actually was inside Concord at the time. We were screaming his name, Beanie, Beanie. And I just remember that. So when I was there, it was just weird to me. I used to think about that shit. Like, damn, man.
Like full circle in a messed up kind of way.
Yeah. So absolutely, I think, you know, him not being there played a part in that.
Yeah, it's never really just one thing. It's a bunch of things that do play a part. And like you said, like when you go through certain things that, like when you're a child, there's like a magicness to it, right? But then if you get like exposed to like some real life stuff, it kind of sucks all that magic out of being a child, and it's like you're already like introduced to the real world and how cold it can be, and that's probably why your mom was telling you to be tough, because the world's gonna be tough on you. You know what I mean? And that's for certain, and not having your dad around and everything like that. And so, any uncles or anybody else that did time? What I'm trying to get to, basically, was it so abnormal for somebody in the family to be doing time, or is that something that maybe not if but when type of deal? Like,
it wasn't like that, right? My mother was my mother and my father, so she played both roles, right? My mother did time before, not too much time.
My mom too, man. My grandma did a little time for welfare fraud, bro. That's uncles. My dad.
Yes, and so you see that, right? And it it sticks on that young mind, right? And so once I was exposed to a lot of things.
Yeah, I think it must like kind of desensitize us a little bit too when we actually know people who've been through it, because then you're like, man, if he could do it, I could do it, as opposed to like not knowing anything about it, and you hear all these stories, and it's like, oh my, it's like, I feel like being around people getting locked up, it desensitizes us to it, and some people might even want to follow in their father's footsteps. I got friends just like that in a weird way, man. So
when you grow up in them environments, right? When you grow up in the cities and in these hoods and in poverty in general, right? So when you grow up in that, you kind of become that, right? And so you see it. And so what happened with me, I used to see it, and then eventually I stepped off the porch and I became, because I saw a lot of stuff in my household. I was exposed to a lot of stuff at a young age, right? And then, it became, like at home when you getting whooped, stop being bad. So in your head, you thinking you can't go home and tell your parents or your mother. I couldn't do that. I couldn't go home and be like, oh, that's what I'm really feeling. But nah, she didn't want. I don't want to hear that. Be tough, and that's that. And you bad. So I thought I was bad. And so when I stepped off the porch, and being a person with small stature, I was a little dude. And so, I did what I had to do. I try to be the example, but I'm not trying to glorify that. But it's just you see that, right? And then it becomes behavioral issues that translate. Because I went through the school prison pipeline, right? It went from, getting suspended, getting into fights, then I got expelled.
What grade does that start, the whole suspension and stuff like that? Does that start real early? It started kind of early with me.
So I'll say around like second, third grade, I got expelled. So I used to go to the JP Manning. I got expelled from there. I got expelled from John F. Kennedy, and then I ended up at the what's this place? So it's in they call it the Behrman Center now. The Francis J. Parker. Back in this, so that was like the alternative school.
I've heard somebody mention that Behrman Center name on this podcast.
Yeah, so it's Francis J. Parker and JP. But so after that, so once I was going there, we ended up moving to New Jersey.
So what's the real quick before you get to the moving to New Jersey? What's the reaction at home when you're getting in trouble from mom and everything like that? And then also like academically, how'd you do with the work itself?
For me, it wasn't even about the work or the school or anything like that. Back then, I was a little self-conscious, right? Because I was dark skinned. You had that interracial, that inter-racism going on, like between like light skin and black. That's a product of slavery, thing, right? Yeah. That's brought up through slavery. So, and we still imitate that today too, right? And so I had a problem with that. So I used to always get in fights because people were like, you dark this, you black that. So I used to always fight. And so I had an image, so I had self-conscious about myself. So when I was in school, somebody just looked at me, I thought they was just like, why are you looking at me?
Right.
And so I was always quick to go. And it led to a lot of suspensions. The work, I was good with the work. Both of my brothers, my oldest brother, he has his master's, and then my other brother, he's smart. He didn't do any. No, he did a little bit of college. And myself, I did some college too. Like I was telling you earlier, Tuppet. Yeah, it wasn't the work or anything.
Yeah, okay.
It was stuff from at home. Being out,
Yep, taking it out.
Yeah,
in school,
yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. Was there ever a time where any of the teachers kind of took to you and wondered why, like asked you, like, is there stuff going on at home or anything like that? Or do you seem like for the most part they could care less? Public schools got a lot of people.
Nah, BPS, man. They didn't care.
Was it like sometimes there's that one teacher, you know, bro, honestly, I couldn't even name you most of my teachers. I remember like one or two, but there's one I'll never forget. But there was nothing like that. None of the teachers that tried to.
No, I think one teacher that I remember, and the only reason I remember her because she was like only one of the black teachers that I knew. Mm-hmm. And this was in Trenton. We was living in Trenton, New Jersey, and her daughter was I don't know if you remember the Play-Doh. They had a little Mr. Potato Head. So she did a commercial, and that's how I remember her. But she was kind. She was funny. Nice to me, yeah. But I wasn't even in school that long.
Yeah.
I went to school, I think up till, so we lived in New Jersey for like 3 years.
So just break that down real quick.
Okay.
Why the move?
Why the move? My mother got into some trouble.
Okay.
And so we had to move. So we had to move for a little bit.
I mean, how'd you feel at that time, just being uprooted? And a lot of times you're leaving your whole life when you're that young. That's your whole life.
Yeah, nah, that hurt.
Did you rebel against that?
Nah, we couldn't. You know, my mother wasn't going.
She wasn't having
that. Nah, my mother was having that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it was tough because we moved around a lot. And so that first time, it was like, damn, man. You know, I mean, that hurt.
Do you feel like that was part of a reason why you started to misbehave now in the Trenton schools? Or
now,
happens?
Trenton was even more poor than we was at in the Berry, in Roxbury, right? So when we got out there, I mean, when we first got there, right, we ended up in this hotel. So they put you up in a hotel if you don't have, you know, places to, so they put you there till they find you housing. But the welfare office was right next to the prison, Trenton State Prison.
Wow.
Right? And it was just weird. And so all that plays back, you know, as I get older and I sit back and I think back on, you know, my upbringing. And, you know, that factors into it. But when we moved to Trenton, Trenton was just as worse.
How many of y'all? You and your two brothers?
My two brothers, so it was me.
Your mom and your grandma?
Yeah, my grandmother came a little after.
How important, like you said, mom was great. Mom had her issues. Mom, you know, they have issues. How important was like the grandmother in growing up for you? My grandmother
was cool. Me and my grandmother, but I was more closer to my mother. But my grandmother was dead when my mother wasn't dead, so she probably played like the father role too.
It takes a village, right? You know.
Yeah, so Absolutely. She was there. It was just us five mainly, but we had other siblings. They, you know, their father, because we got different fathers. So they had my two older brothers have the same father, and so we got other siblings and stuff like that too. So I got, what do you call them? Half siblings, and then I have other siblings.
That's still family or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you said school. When did school stop for you? Is that in Trenton? Do you come back to Boston?
No, we came back. So we ended up back in Boston. We ended up back in Mass. And so I went to school till we came back 6th, 7th grade. I started getting locked up.
All right, so right before that,
yes.
A little bit about just that whole Trenton experience as far as school and how, like, you know, summarize that and, you know.
Well, Trenton was where I got exposed. This is where I really got exposed to the game, right? So Trenton, at the time, you had like a lot of 5%ers and Muslims and some hustlers, right? So it was all interspersed. You had some 5%ers that was hustlers. You had some hustlers that was 5%ers. So, you know, it's interchangeable there. And so when I was seeing that, you know, that was kind of, I dug that because, you know, you see everybody out there with the gold chains, dudes was out there really hustling, getting it. And so I started going back and forth to New York, you know, moving, you know, stuff like that. But that's where I really got exposed. And once we moved back to Mass, that was, you know, it was just downhill from there.
So what happened? What's next in the story? You come to Mass. You said this is about the time you start getting arrested.
Yeah, I was in school, so I started. You know, I was hustling at this time. I started. You know, I was in the hustling, carrying pistols. I was, you know, I was just out there in the street. You know, my mother, she could at that point, you know, it was just make sure you're safe.
You're pretty much grown.
Yeah. Right. And so once I went to I remember I first went to DYS, it was at 13. I'll never forget that. That was crazy. So I did a couple months in the Brockton Y. I'll never forget that.
Brockton Y?
Yeah, Brockton
okay.
Y. So I was in Brockton Y. I did that I forget how many months I did, like 3 or 4 months or so. Yeah. And then after that, I came home. And I was only home for like a couple months. I went back. And so this time they sent me to, I think I went to Westboro. I ended up at
Westboro Secure.
Yeah, I was in Westboro Secure. Yeah. I was in JRI. I was in Rosendale. I was in Challenge. I was in quite a few of them. But after that, so I went in, I think in 93. So I wasn't on the street. So once I started from 91 up until, I could say back from 91.
So talk about that whole juvenile experience, right? I guess, summarize what that was about, and then like what you were able to get from it. I mean, why did it, did you want to go on a straight path after that? Just talk a little bit about that.
I didn't want to, so I was in the streets at that time. I was just full-blown ignorant.
Right, so it's more like a feather in the cap when you're that age. Like,
I was just full-blown ignorant. You couldn't tell me anything, right? And, I had a little crew. I had a little crew I used to run with my partners, Bub, Bam, peace be upon them. So I had a little crew I was running with. And, but we was under like my older brother and a few of the homies from back around the way that was out there at the time. But I was full-fledged all the way in my ignorance, right? And so DYS was just like, for me, it was like this, like a glass, right? And it just showed that map that was just marching right to the prison doors. Right. And that's what it was for me, because I was just in and out. And I did a stretch from 91 to 93, right? And then I got out in 90.
Now talk about that.
This is DYS.
Okay, that was the DYS.
This is DYS. And so I came home in 94, and I was only out a few months, right? And I went back. That was when I was 17, and that was it.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't come home until I was 44.
So you get out, and you said it was only a few months?
Few months.
All right, so just, I guess, talk a little bit about what are you doing these few months, kind of. I know you said you're all in, and like events that kind of lead up to you going away.
Yeah, when I came home in 94, I was kind of living out in the suburbs with some this lady that adopted me, because my mother had passed away when I was 14, about to be 15. She passed away in 92 while I was in DYS. And
I mean, just before we get into that, talk about that experience being locked up when, your mom passes away. Was that something, did they let you go see her? I mean.
Yeah, they did let me go see her. So that, my mother passed away. It was weird, because I had spoke to her one day on a call, because, they do the calls kind of weird in there. They only give you a certain amount of calls. And so I had spoke to her. She had been sick, right? And so she was in a hospice at the time too. I didn't even know what the fuck a hospice was, right? Yeah. I'm just like, oh, she'd be hospice, she'd be okay, right? After that time, the last time I spoke to her, it just happened. Yeah. But it kind of just, it rocked my foundation, you know what I mean? Because I was a mama's boy. I love my mama. Yeah. Shirley she was tough, so it kind of just made me more angry than what I was.
It's almost like when you were coming out, you weren't even coming home to mom. No. You kind of was coming straight home to the streets, and that's about it.
That's exactly what happened.
All right, so I just wanted to backtrack a little bit. So now you're in the suburbs, you're staying with the lady who adopted you.
Yeah, because what's
going on? She just got you for the check type of deal, and you able to do as you please, or what's going on there?
Nah, it's some history behind that too. Okay. So I was dating her daughter first before I met her. I knew. So her daughter I was dating, but her oldest daughter I had knew. So I knew both her daughters. And she had came to see me in DYS one time, because she was like, I want to go see who my daughters visit and all this stuff. So when I come on to visit, she's sitting there with her and her daughter. I'm like, oh. So I sit down. So we hit it off. And then, long story short, she ended up adopting me before I came home in 94. So I was living out there. I was living in Weymouth with them. I was going to high school and everything for like a couple months. But then one day I was just like, I can't do this shit. I got to be in the street. Yeah. But this is how toxic
The thinking
The
is.
thinking is, right? This is how, so I'm like, I gotta be out in the street.
Right.
I can't do this.
And you really dead serious, though? You knew what you were doing, too, you know?
I was on it. I was like, I can't do this. I need to be out in the street with, you know, because that life wasn't exciting. I didn't know that.
Right.
I just knew being out in this element. This, you know, this is something foreign to me.
Yeah.
And so she told me, she said, if you leave, you end up in jail. And sure enough, when I left, it was around like Halloween of '94, somewhere around that time. And I left. And probably like a day later or whatever it was, I was locked up.
Wow.
Yeah.
A day later, you're locked up. So
Locked up.
I guess where does this where do you catch this case? What jail are you in waiting trial?
So the case, we cut the case out in Brockton. We were staying out in Brockton.
So you were in Plymouth at the time?
Yeah, I ended up in Plymouth. So I ended up there. So I was in DYS first. So they didn't just lock me up. So I ended up, they locked me up. I'll go to DYS, but I don't go for the homicide. I don't go for that. They put me over there in DYS because I wasn't supposed to leave the house. So if I had left the house, you know, they report. So I was in DYS, they came and got me on a secret indictment. And so I ended up in Plymouth. Like when they came and got me, I went to the jail, and then they took me to be arraigned. Then I was in Plymouth at 17.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's going through your mind with all this? What kind of emotions are you feeling? You're young and now you're getting hit with these serious. You just think you're in on like a violation type of deal. Juvenile, well, whatever, I'll age out when I age out, but then now you get this. Let's just talk about like how real that is and how, I mean, alone you must have felt and what's going through your mind, or maybe not, like get numb to it.
Yeah, now this is what I was going to touch base on before, but it kind of slipped my mind. And so, and this touch back, we was talking about, when I was talking about young brothers and stuff and sisters, right? We have this, and I'll speak more to the brothers, it's like we have this warped sense of what manhood looks like, right? And so growing up, we aspire to be the drug dealers, what we see. You know, the drug dealers, the hustlers, the pimps, the killers, all this. So this is where I was at. In my mindset, so when I caught the homicide, I was just like, okay. You know, at first it's like, damn, I might not be going home for a while. And so once it wear off, once I got to Plymouth, I was like, oh, I can just be out and do what I want to do. I'm not in DYS no more. And so, you know, the ignorance, it's like doing math. It's exponential, right?
So what are you doing with your time at that point while you're waiting trial? Are you in the library trying to get right there, or you just kind of you stop reading, or you just, what are you doing, messing around, getting in trouble?
Yeah, I was always in the box. I just couldn't conform to that shit. I just couldn't. And so, you know, most of my issues came dealing with the administration, right? But I just couldn't function. I mean, it's just not something somebody could conform to.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, so I ended up for many years like that. I was always in a box.
Okay.
You know, in Plymouth. And even when I went upstate, yeah.
So okay, let's talk about that. You get your time, right? We kind of went over that, what you got for a sentence. What year is this? Where's the first stop?
So in '94, so when I was 17, I didn't leave. I stayed there almost 4 years.
You stayed in Plymouth?
In Plymouth almost 4 years.
Waiting trial?
94 up until 98, yeah. Waiting trial.
Okay, so you're there for 4 years. So you got 4 years in on it. Okay, but you do get the sentence after the 4 years. Where's the first stop? Is it Walpole?
No, the first stop, because at the time, if you had a natural, they would send you and put you in the box and send you to Walpole and get your number. You go to Walpole. But I had a second degree life sentence, 15 to life at the time, and so they sent me to Concord, which was still kind of like gladiator school at the time. Right? It was just 52 A's up there. 52 A's is like if you did a state bid before, right, and you get locked back up, they'll send you upstate because you probably still got a Concord number at the time. The Concord numbers was crazy.
Yeah, I know Suffolk and Middlesex were doing that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of Concord numbers. And so I was up there, and it was just like, oh shit, I'm in prison, right? Nothing, no TVs. They had a hot pot on the tier. I was on the third tier, J5. I'll never forget that.
Was it like half-hour tier times?
Yeah, it was like different blocks. It was different. So everybody go to the gym, the yard, but it was still kind of like gladiator school.
So did you make it? You say gladiator school. Did you make it through there without any trouble? Or did you get sent to the box in Concord?
Nah, I didn't get. I made it out of there. I got out of there.
All right, so you see classification.
Yeah, so I went to class.
Talk about that. I mean, it's your first charge, right? You don't got, but you got a serious charge. Where do they send you? Where do they give you?
They sent me at the time Old Colony. Old Colony was level 5 at the time. It's not what it is today. Today it's like primarily mental health. Yeah, mental health based.
So talk about that. How many points did you have then to get?
I don't even remember how many points I had, but they was just like, listen, your county record sucks, so you gonna end up you got to go over here. So they said that's what they were sending. Like if you went to Walpole, you went from Walpole to Old Colony, then you went to level 4, so 654. So you got to work your way down. And so they said, listen, we're gonna send you to Old Colony. And so I go to Old Colony. It's just like, oh shoot, I got there, and I didn't last long. Yeah, I didn't last long. I think I stayed, because I was getting like little silly shit. Yeah. Like picking up different little silly tickets. And so I stayed there up until 90, right before they opened. I didn't stay there long, right until they opened the max, right a little bit after they opened the max. Yep. And then I in the max in 90, I want to say 98, 99, around there.
You guys sent straight from the hole, from Old Colony?
Old Colony to, I'm like, SBCC, so it's a bag. So I see the bag, right? My name on it, I'm like, SBCC, I'm like, Bay State? No, that can't be Bay State. So we going out here, I'm like, oh, so I see them like, oh, we up at the max. Yeah.
So talk about that. I mean, Old Colony generally, is a little bit more open, right? I mean, you got big yacht, softball, even though you're in the box most of the time. If you're in population, you're a little more open, and then you get up to the max, and then what's that like? What's that like? Is that
you get to the max? It was locked down. It was you basically in a unit, right?
Was single cells at the time?
At the time, it was single cells.
It was open, all right.
Yeah, it was open cells, and you basically in the unit all day.
Yeah.
You got the rec deck attached to it. You go to the gym, but it was serious up there at the time. You still had like the generation where you didn't see as many gangs as you see today.
At what point
the culture wasn't like that.
At what point do you realize how like serious it is up there? Is it something that you had to see? Is it just a feeling when you walk through? Sometimes you say you can feel the tension, or is it? Yeah,
you definitely can feel the tension, right? As soon as you walk in the door, you feel that. You feel that with the COs. And at the time, it was fresh, so it was kind of, the tension was with the administration, with the COs. But then you had, you had different prison. You got the politics of prison. Yeah. And the tension was real. It can go down like any minute.
So did you at least see familiar faces? How's it work when you get your tray and you gotta sit down?
Yeah, no, you got tables.
That first time
you sit with, it's through neighborhoods.
Neighborhoods.
And so every place, if you from Academy, if you from JP, you sit up. JP, they was on the other side of it. You couldn't be on the same side. But if you different areas, you sit at the table. That's who you sit with. You from New Bedford. You can be from Fall River. Different tables. Certain groups sit with each other, but you definitely have assigned seats.
Sit like with the Roxbury people.
That's right.
Someone have to come up to you and let you know
from
this?
You usually know somebody, or they tell you like, yo, this is where they sit. Let's say you get to the child hall earlier than normal, and they'll just tell you like, this is where dudes sit at. And that's how I went, and that's who you hung with for the most part.
Okay, so how long does it take until you get into some trouble up there? What's going on up in the max? What's that experience? So
the max at the time, like I was saying, you had a little tension with the guards. So they was like, yo, we're gonna take this is our prison, right? And so there was a lot of silliness going on. I stayed up there up until 2001. And so what led up to that? So I'll tell you what happened. I got into a little skirmish with the superintendent and a couple of COs. But what led up to that was they was on some like little petty shit up there, like tucking your T-shirt. You can't have this in your cell. Like this, it was just bare minimum up there at the time, right? Yeah. And I was always on sanctions, so I didn't have nothing to begin with. So I didn't really care, right? But it was this one day, I go in the child hall, and it was this CO messing with this, this dude that was in the block, right? That I was kind of familiar with. So they end up lugging him. They let him leave the child hall. He go back to his unit, and they go down there with the move team. They get him out. They take him out of the cell and they take him to the hall. And so that night, they go to the child hall. I'm watching him. He don't sit with us. These are like Latin King cats, right? A couple of them. So he's going around, he's asking dudes like, yo, what's up? So I'm peeping this. I'm already mad because, you know, I just think it's some, you know, some nonsense. Everybody's like, nah, whatever. So I just watch him. He go up, throw the tray at the seal behind the counter, and then I get up. When one person rolled from the table, everybody rolled. And so when I got up, that's when dudes got up behind me. It kind of went a little crazy from there. And the superintendent was involved. A couple of COs got, you know, injured a little bit. And that's how I ended up in DDU I spent 12 years, 8 months, almost 13 years over there.
So I'm sure they weren't happy with you. I'm sure you were getting all sorts of shit from the staff everywhere you went. Like, what was that experience like, man? And then I guess break down DDU for those who don't. I mean, most people know, but talk about what is DDU, and then what's the experience over there. Well,
DDU is it's the Departmental Disciplinary Unit. So it's like the last stop on the bus. You know, they send anybody that can't conform to the system, they're gonna send you over to DDU. So, and DDU is 24-hour lockup. So you only get an hour out of the cell, right? Anytime you leave the cell, you strip searched. You got bare minimum over there. They give you, like, at the time, you couldn't have any of your property, right? And so they would give you the bobos. So you be outside in the bobos, in the little jumpsuit. Rain, sleet, or snow. It didn't even matter. And so, but before I got to DDU, they sent me to 10 block.
Oh, yeah.
And I never been to 10 block. And so when they bring us over there at night, the night of the incident, they bring us over there, it's dark. So when they bring me, I'm like, oh shit, it's like a dungeon, man. So I'm like, what the hell's going on here? They throw me in the cell, boom, shut the door. So it's bars, and then they got a solid door that's closed on that. So I'm in the cell, but I'm so paranoid. I'm like, when they gonna come in here and kill me? You know, that's what I was thinking that whole time, that whole night. Yeah, so the whole night I'm thinking, like, when they gonna come in here and kill me, right? Because we just, you know, got busy with them.
Yeah.
Right? But unfortunately, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because at the time, we didn't know they had something that happened down at Shirley Medium. They had jumped on a couple people and the priest reported it. And so they was listening, you know, on the wire for what was going on up there in the compound. But we didn't notice at the time. Damn. And that kind of saved us.
So how does it work? Do you sit in 10 block until you see like a disciplinary board and then you get a DDU like sentence? Or how does it work? So they come with it's a red stamp. So normally you get like a regular ticket, they list the charges you with, right? So when you get the red stamp, they can sentence you from anywhere, DDU from six months to 10 years at the time. Yeah. And they came with the red stamp, boom, DDU ticket. And they gave us a criminal, you know, court case for that shit. Outside charges?
Yeah, they gave us a court case. But we didn't even know we got indicted. We knew from TV, from the news. At the time, they let you have TVs down there, but they ended up taking them out. So we was watching the news one day, like, yo, turn the news on. And that's when I learned we got indicted.
Wow. Yeah. And so what's going through your mind as you're getting indicted? Just, I mean, did you feel like this might have been coming up?
Absolutely. So I knew I would get 10 years. I knew I was going to get 10 years.
The max they could give you in DDU?
Absolutely.
Okay. And
then
now
the max. And then on the other one, they charged me with 4 charges. So they gave me, and each charge was up 10 years each. And so, but I ended up copping out to 4 to 5 years. Okay. From and after the life sentence.
Oh, okay. So how does that work, right? Because that's similar to my brother has a sentence almost like that, but things were different. Do they aggregate? How does it work?
So they had this, I guess, rule or law that says second-degree lifers can't get their sentence aggregated, right? And so when I was appointed a juvenile attorney when they did the attorney raise the level to 17 at the time, right? For juvenile lifers. But even though I was considered an adult at the time. But when they raised the age to 17, you know, I got all everything that was afforded to all the juvenile lifers. So I was appointed this attorney, and I shot her out, Lisa Newman Pope. She's the truth. Yes. And so when she was appointed to me, I told her, I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. Like, why exclusively is second-degree lifers can't have their sentence aggregated, one parole eligibility date, right? And so she was like, oh no, I don't think we can have an argument with that, but I kept pressing her on it. And then finally she brought in another good lawyer, he's a friend of mine as well, Ryan Schiff. And then so we kind of, you know, we argued that, and then they ended up overturning that, and that's why everybody today can have all the second degree lifers can have their sentence aggregated now.
Okay, and if that didn't happen, you would have had to what, parole from one bid to the next?
To the next.
And then have to wrap that up, or
so I would have
see
to
parole again?
So I would have to wrap up. So parole from my life sentence to the 4 to 5, which so I ended up winning that. So we won that lawsuit, right? And it was another lawsuit that we was, what was the other lawsuit I was fighting? There was another one too that we fought. See, this is the old age right here.
Was it about the DDU time maybe?
Oh, the DDU time. No, we didn't. So yeah, we fought. I had a lawsuit on that one too. So what that did was, that was another lawsuit. We won that lawsuit. That was through PLS though.
Okay.
So the other one was just being the aggregation sentence, and then it was another one. I forget, but it was significant. Yeah.
Yep. So ultimately, you get this 10-year sentence in DDU, right? Do you do the whole 10 straight? You said you did 13. Did something happen? Did you get out? And then I guess at like what point does your mindset start to shift from this guy that's real, you know, a thorn in the side of the administration to, you know, the man I see today who eventually got out and is doing wonderful things?
And I think for me, so when we went to New Jersey, we were exposed to, you know, 5%ers. So, you know, the Nation of Guards and Herbs. And so that gave me knowledge of self, right? And that opened my mind up, right? I was always a curious child because I used to play around in the neighborhood, you know, shit like that. But once I was exposed to, that was the first time I was exposed to like culture, my culture, right? Because I was learning about different cultures in school. They don't teach you black culture in school, right? You learn about Christopher Columbus and all this. So, but I was exposed, so I was awakened. But my mind, I was still, you know, my brain was still formulating. I think the brain never stops.
Even with, like, it's always been part of you since Trenton. Is that what starts the paradigm shift of the mindset?
Okay.
And the, you know?
Let's take it. So I went in 2001. I'll never forget. September 2001. I walked out the doors in 2014, May of 2014. But during that time, I used to read a lot. So I read a lot of literature, right? I was reading before I even came upstate. I read a couple books in Plymouth, but I read a lot of books. So that's how I used to strengthen my mind. So I would read a lot. And I would build with certain dudes on the tier, whatever the case may be, right? That kind of like just opened my mind up to a lot of things, you know. But the being a 5%er, that just, and then you couple that with Tuppet, the college, it was just, you know, it just opened my mind up to so much more. That's why, like, out here now, like I do shit that they say is white people shit, right? Canoeing, pickleball, I do shit like that, right? Because I think it's important for that, for people to get out here and know and see that coming up, they tell us that, oh, this is where you belong, right? And you start to believe that shit. Like, this is the hood, you know, I love the hood. You know, I love my peoples. But that's not where we belong, man. We don't belong in poverty. Nobody belongs in poverty. I don't care, but that's not, the world is for everybody, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's just wealth. That's all it is, right? And so I try to get out here and I try to show people different. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to try new things. Obviously, what you were doing before wasn't working, right? So you got to try new things. I was talking about this the other day. Be open-minded. You never know what you might be a natural at. You might find your gift doing, you know, or your absolute passion and something that could turn into something you feel like you can't live with, like even canoeing. Like, you might try it and do it for the rest of your life, and then realize, you know what I mean? You never know. You got to be open-minded, try new things. Obviously, the old things weren't working, right? So doing all that whole time, man, and reading and all that time in prison, just what did you learn about yourself in there?
Now, being over there, right? you're forced to look at yourself in the mirror. And I tell you, this is what I think the most significant part of my story is my homie, my best friend, Bub. That's my partner. And so he was over there with me. We all went over there. It was like 8 of us that went over there. So he was on the tier with me. And so we used to get move teams, all kind of, just silly shit, right? So right before the first time I was going to parole, 2009, I was in a cell. I forget what happened on the tier. No, matter of fact, my homie had went to see mental health. And I'm like, we used to frown upon that. And so I sent him a cut like, yo, what's up? You good, whatever, So it was kind of like, But then I thought back on it and I'm like, oh shit, it was a lesson learned for me, right? But then when the parole started coming up, I was like, yo, something gotta give. And then I wrote him a kite. I sent it down on the tier, shot it down to him like, listen, man, I'm cool. Like I'm done, man. Like we gotta hold each other accountable now, man. We adults now. We ain't, we ain't kids. We ain't kids no more, right? And so from that point on, I was working on self, right? I started petitioning to get in the program because they wouldn't let certain lifers on the programs over there. And so I remember I wrote the commissioner like, listen, man, why can't I be in the program, eligible to be out, to go home? I have an opportunity to go home, so I'm trying to better myself. And so I advocated for myself in that way, right? And they started letting guys, like a certain amount of guys be in the programs. From that point, I remember, I'll never forget, I go to the parole board and I just told them, they were like, why are you here? I said, listen, I'm just here. I'm not here to make a mockery of the board, right? I'm here to see what I have to do to get on. And they was like, listen, you need to go do some mental health, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. And I took that. I ate that. I knew I was gonna get I got a 5-year setback, right? And so once I was seeing them so I saw them in 2009 the first time. And then 2014, when I got out of DDU, I postponed it. Another 5 years, I did that. So I said, I'm not ready. They not ready for me, and I know I'm not ready yet. And I took that time, and I just capitalized off it. So I did that, and then but Tuppet was Hillary Bender. She's the best, man. I got to give it to her. Like she's director of Tuppet, and when she came to Concord with the program, I didn't even think I was gonna get in there. But we ended up in there. And that just took off for a lot of guys. It
must have felt like, especially doing your setback, you might not even had an idea at the time that that's what you would fall into, but then falling into that, you must have been like, oh, that's why I did. Coming from above, coming from wherever it came from, it seems to happen for a reason to get put into that and into the Tuppet program at Concord, right? Is that like what's going on?
It was so my brother was doing the BU program when he was inside of Norfolk. And so we used to correspond with one another. I was kind of always interested in a little bit in college. So when it came, I was like, you know what? I don't have, I had got my GED back in Plymouth. So I was always, doing something but getting in trouble. And so I had the GED. And when the program with Tuppet came to Concord, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try this. And dude was in the block, so I went and I did it and they accepted me.
Nice.
And I was like, wow. But the education, it was just so different than what I was used to, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you start to, it really does, open your mind. But fast forward to today, that kind of Tuppet opened up many doors for me. It helped me get to when I'm working at Harvard, many opportunities.
Absolutely. Like, so you also talked about too what you had said about the parole board had said about addressing the mental health, and then how you had at one point when your boy went to mental health, you were like, we frowned upon that.
Yes.
So I guess talk about why is that frowned upon, probably especially more in the Black community, where people don't talk about. It's in the male men's community as well. They don't talk about that to the point where you start to actually address it. And
so, as a kid, I was getting into so much. Like I told you before, I was getting expelled and everything. So they ended up sending me to a psychiatrist. I never forget this, right? So they sent me to a psychiatrist over at Demick. I'm just like, what am I doing here? Like it was just foreign to me. Like I don't need this shit, right?
Yeah.
So, but fast forward to the incident with my partner, I get out of DDU, I start going to see mental health on my own. But I wasn't classified as, as having mental health issues, but I used to go and see the counselor, right? So that kind of, but I would say this, I would recommend people go and see somebody. If if you're dealing with some issues, go talk to somebody, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're talking to the same people, you're gonna hear the same,
Right.
you're gonna hear the same answer. It's just one say it this way, one say it that way, right? So you're gonna get the same answer. But I think there's value, in going and being able to talk to somebody and not have to worry about being judged. And in the black community, it's definitely frowned upon. Any type of authority.
Can you see how? Mental health can have an effect on somebody doing all that whole time, man?
It had an effect on me. I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. It's not natural to have somebody caged up as long as I was caged up. I know guys come in, in a couple days, they gone. They calling you all types of niggas and all kind of crazy. It's just all kind of crazy, cutting up, know. So you see psychosis setting early. Did it have a adverse effect on me? Absolutely, absolutely. I spent most of my 20s and part of my early 30s in lockup, in a box, in a cage. Like even today, like I kind of I'm not into the crowds. I'm not, I don't like being around people like that all the time, right? I get out and go out to certain events and stuff, but it's not good for the mind, right? I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
Not even my worst enemy, man. Because I know I seen it, people in there taking their own lives, right, from that, right?
Inhumane, for sure.
Yes, definitely. They don't even lock up dogs. They treat dogs better than that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll be out here picking up dog shit today, right? I do, and to think that I was caged up like that, because in our minds you think, oh, animals are supposed to be caged up like that. They shouldn't be caged up like that either.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, like, you see that when I first saw a kennel, it was with the dogs. They was coming scooping up the dogs. The dudes were still in the neighborhood, right? And then to end up in an environment like that.
So, how long until you get into college, until you finally get the chance to parole out, and what's that like, man?
So I was in a program. So we started the program like 2018, right? And so while I was in the program doing the courses and classes, I get parole. I got parole in 2019. I received parole to the on and after, 4 to 5. So while I'm in the program, they take me out of the program, they snatch me and throw me in the hole for allegedly receiving K2 from my attorney.
Wow.
And so that kind of threw my college off a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, it threw it off a lot, actually, right? And when I came, so it was some nonsense, right? I won't get into the details because I have a lawsuit with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how long did you have to sit in the hole at that time now?
That was agonizing. I sat for a couple months.
Yeah.
A couple months. And I tell you, right, that's the worst feeling ever. Here it is, I work hard. I worked hard to get that parole. I'm talking about hard. My goal was to get out by the time I was 50. And so I worked hard. I didn't go in with no expectations. And so when they gave it to me, I was like, whoa, I've never felt that feeling before, right?
Yeah.
And then, now here they say my parole could be in jeopardy for their fault.
Yeah.
I almost lost it.
You almost lost your mind or the parole? Both?
I almost lost parole, almost lost my mind, I almost relapsed.
Wow.
I almost relapsed behind that because it was just like, damn, man.
Yeah.
Like,
so talk about that. You almost relapsed. Like, when did that become part of your story, and how long was it in between that you were clean up until that point that you almost relapsed?
No, I don't mean relapse. I mean relapse violently.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant drugs.
Yeah, not drugs.
So you almost had
I know there's a different terminology. My apologies.
That's good. That's good.
So I meant violently.
Okay. It still makes sense.
And so that was my addiction.
Yeah.
My addiction was my anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say relapse, that's what I mean by that.
Okay.
Right? I never was addicted
to.
So
what kind of what's the conversation with self that kind of calms you down from that? Is it just let's make it through today without crashing out, see how I feel tomorrow? Like what happened? Like what's the
Well, initially it wasn't me that calmed me. It was the CO that was kind of, I think he used to work up HSU.
Wow.
And he was just like, yo, you need to just calm down, man, don't make matters worse. Because I was banging on the door, it was door like, oh, man, what the hell's going on out here?
Yeah.
Like, oh, y'all know this is some bull. And so he's like, yo, you don't want to make it worse. I was like, cool. And then they put me in the box. But it was every day, it was just like, man, that's the worst feeling, man.
I bet.
You know, because you ain't got no date to go home. That's yeah.
Yeah, man, that must have been a tough one to get through, but you did it without crashing out, and then eventually you get your parole. Did you have to see them again, or what happens?
So they sent the stuff out, came back negative, right? So they let me out, and once I won the lawsuit to have since it's aggregated, I ended up over across the street in the minimum. Okay. And
you saw the parole from the minimum?
Yeah, and so no, I had parole, so they didn't let me go. They gave my parole. They didn't rescind the parole, so they sent me across the street. And I'll never forget, I get over there, the day I go over there, they just take the cuffs off and was like, I was just like, oh, it was just after 27 years, man.
Yeah.
At the time, so it was 27 years.
It was almost like you were free.
I wasn't free. I knew I wasn't free.
Yeah.
Right. I think. Do
you think that's?
I understand it.
Do you think that's beneficial though, to make the steps down and not have to like wrap up or parole from a max or something like that? I mean, but do you think that benefited you going?
I don't know. I don't think it benefited me.
To the minimum.
Yeah. I don't think it benefited me personally, but I think it. Because I think I was ready.
Yeah.
I knew I was ready, right?
Yep.
But I think it's beneficial for a lot of people to have that. But only if these institutions are providing the necessary reentry sources that people are going to need when they come out here. Because there's different levels to it, right? You can have a step-down program if you don't have if this person doesn't have the resources on the other side of the wall
to follow through with it all.
Yeah. This is why the recidivism rate is so high, because people are just sitting in the joint.
Yeah.
And then when you tell a person you open up the door, what do you think they're gonna do? They don't have the tools. They don't have the skills to do this stuff. And so, and then you have people that they need that. You've been away for so long. Like myself, I spent most of my life in institutions. Yeah. Right? But I cultivated a lot of relationships during the time I was in, right? I didn't always have it like that. But I ended up cultivating some good relationships, and I built a strong support system for myself. But everybody doesn't have that. Right? And so those step down levels are good. And if you can provide the resources, I think it's a great tool.
Absolutely. So you do 27 years, you get out, and looking back, what was the worst part about that? We get a lot of glorification, movies, music, and stuff like that, but we want to let the youth know, or anybody know. Let's give them both sides of it, right? Give them the worst part about that.
The worst part, I think, there's many aspects to it, right?
Yeah.
There's the part when you lose your family members. I lost my mother, my father, my grandmother, both my grandmothers, my grandfathers. Well, my other grandfather, he passed away when I came home. He was 101.
Yeah.
But I lost most of my family in prison. Yeah. While I was in there, right? And then I lost so you think I went in at 17, right? Most kids are in high school, they're about to graduate.
Yeah.
then they go, supposed to, right? This is the America. We go
Right,
graduate high school, go to college. So all these years that I'm supposed to be doing this, being out in life, in society, I spent in prison.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so you lose that, the chance of being a father in a lot of cases.
Right.
Like, I don't have kids, right? But at this stage, I don't want kids because I think it'd be a disservice to a child, because that's just my personal beliefs, right?
Absolutely.
Anybody can have, I mean, a male, right? If you can produce sperm, you can have a baby, but I'm not, I lost that opportunity.
So it's almost like you lost your parents and your, hypothetically your kids, right? Or the chance to have kids, you know what I mean?
Because I'm out here trying to get situated, right? And I look at it, you know, so that's another part that's bad about it, right? And just the opportunities, man. Like, you know, like I'm reaching like most, so in Tuppet, I'm middle of the pack, right? There's the young guys, you have Spit, you have Saquon, you have Jeffrey, you have Junie, you have all these guys, right? Yeah, see, you have all these guys, right? And I'm middle of the pack, so they younger. So they coming out here with more opportunity, more, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
to do things. So I lost that. I lost a lot of that.
Yeah.
And I'm just, but I accept that.
Absolutely.
That's the thing. I accept that, and I'm just meeting life where it meets me at.
So what are you looking forward to, man, with your freedom now, man? What are some things you're looking forward to? What are some things you've done since you've been out too, and what are you looking forward to doing?
Honestly, working at Harvard is like, okay, the pay's good, right? But I want to do something that's more impactful.
Yeah.
And recently, right, I had an interview, which is going to sound crazy. I had an interview inside Nashville Street Jail, right, in Nash, and it's for this 45-man unit they're constructing over there, but it's through Boston Medical Center. And initially, I'm like, damn, I don't want to do this, because it was offered to me.
Yeah.
And so when I went in there and I felt it, I was like, okay, this is something I want to do, because I want to be able to touch people's lives in a way where they can go out there and reproduce that, right? And I always tell the kids when I speak at the school too, I always talk about like embers of hope, right? And that's what I want to do. I want to provide hope for people, because when hope is gone, what else do you have?
Right.
What do we have without hope? That's what gets us out back. You know what I mean? So, and that's what I want to be able to spread, to show a person, show some of these young cats out here, some of these young sisters that, listen, I've been at the bottom. I've seen the bottom, right? This is what you can do. But you got to put in the work. But you got to address that. And I tell the homies, a couple of homies that went back inside. They came out, went back, and I'm like, listen, you can't window dress, right? That's like you dress a mannequin, right? You can put clothes on a mannequin, but the mannequin is hollow, right? You can please everybody else, but you got to take care of what's in here, right, to get right. And so I did that, and I'm still doing it. It's a day-to-day thing, right?
Absolutely.
But I just want to show people that with hard work, you know, it can happen.
Yeah.
Don't let people tell you that this is what you are, right? Because that's what happens. You know, you go in a joint, you sit, you just there, and you come out. But there's opportunity out here, right?
Facts.
But the main thing is to try to reach these kids before they even get in there.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
Absolutely.
Because I know that. I know what it's like, right? And that's what I want to be. If I want to be a colonel, I want to be a little ember of hope too. That's what I am.
Yeah. What's the main message that you want to get across by telling your story?
It ain't cool, man. I get it. I lived it. I know what it's about. But in the end, that shit is not worth it. I could sit here and I'm not one of them holy.
Yeah, I got you.
You know, I'm not into that, right? I'm here just to tell them, I'm gonna keep it raw. And that's what I try to do with people. Like, listen, I sat up and I wasted life for what?
Yeah.
You know, for what? You know, we think, you know, we have this, you know, because when you're in the streets, you running with dudes that become your family. And what we think is family, right? But when you go to prison, you lose all that.
Yeah.
You lose all that. Everybody's supposed to be your mans, your girls. You lose everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I would tell them, like, listen, just try to work on self, right? And start there.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy. I tell you, day to day, whether you have an addiction to drugs, alcoholic, or you addicted to the game, you in the street, bro, just, take a time out, man, for a second and think about this. And that's all you can do for a person. Plant the seed and hope they can nurture it and water it.
If you can attribute your freedom staying out and the fact that you're gonna stay out to like one thing, what would it be? Staying busy with your day, the mindset, all of the above, support system.
I'm like an old soul, right? Some of the little homies, they tell me, like, man, you old soul, right? And so I always been like that. And, going through my journey, I just found like peace within self. Like going through all that, I'm just cool with just being out here doing like the basics.
Yeah.
Like I said, canoeing, pickleball. I tried tennis, sucked at that, right? I still play ball, a little bit of ball.
Yeah.
And just the small things, I go out, travel, I go out to I be in the woods a lot too.
Yeah.
So I go
what do you do, like hiking and stuff?
Yeah, I go hiking.
Yeah.
I go up in the woods. Just the basics. What I was told that wasn't attainable, right? I don't even care about the fancy stuff. I like a little fine clothes, a little something, but other than that, I'm just a basic dude, man.
That's it.
That's it.
That's what it's about, man. So why was it important for you to come up here and tell your story today? Why is that important?
One of my big bros, Till, shout out to him. I'm a G on Instagram, on IG. Check my man out. So he had went through some things. He went with his son. His son ended up passing. Right?
Causing the mayhem and destruction. I never really seen my enemies as people. When I lost my child, it was like God's been giving it to me. It's like because there was a period in my life, man, where I was so destructive and I was so confident in being violent. I had the angel of death across my chest. And I was proud, I loved that life. I loved being a demon, but we don't know how strong that demonic energy is.
He just wanted me to come up here, man, and just speak to the youth about, and just try to, he thought it would be dope.
Yeah.
And he inspired me to come up here. I got a lot of respect for him, to go through, just to go through that, right, of losing a child.
Yep. And speaking about it. Yeah. And just like, a lot of these people go through those types of things and never really speak about it. So, especially in front of camera for everybody to see. So, why do you think that's important? Do you think somebody could get something from it?
I think absolutely. Somebody. I hope somebody gets something from it, right? I get something from everybody. Yeah. Like I said, I was talking about. That's like I get something from everything, right? And because it's a lessening thing. If you just sit down, that's why they say you got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Listen. If you listen twice as hard as you talk, then you're gonna learn something. And so that's my motto.
Absolutely.
And I just want to be able, like I said, I just want to be able to impart that on somebody, right?
Absolutely.
And just give them jewels, man, and better than their crown.
Yep.
And hopefully they can take that, man, and realize their potential.
Okay. If you wanted to tell the people where they can find you, Instagram, anything like that.
Oh yeah, I'm on Instagram, man, but I'm just on there, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Eugene Ivey. That's where I'm under, right?
It's a good way though. Somebody out there that might not have seen you in a minute, you know what I mean? Somebody you might have seen years ago down the road, locked up with, you might. Yeah, you might be good to catch up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You can catch me on Instagram, Eugene Ivey. I don't. My Spot, people, my close friends call me Spot, but I don't really,
I got you.
I'm assuming my government.
So I guess any last words or anything that you want to talk about we didn't get a chance to touch on before I let you go?
No, I just want to say, Thank you for having me here, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Shout out to all, just all the Tuppet fam, everybody, man. Mac Hudson, shout him out over at Access Mass. I know I'm forgetting a bunch of people, but yeah, everybody that helped me and assisted me in my growth.
Absolutely.
I want to just shout them out. And
a little bit of, what kind of words would you say to the people locked up? Little advice for those, man, to hold their head and everything, man.
I'll just say, listen, just keep doing what you're doing, man. Y'all stay in them books. People out here working for you.
Absolutely.
You might not see it. I know people probably be upset because, you're not getting them money orders and them food packages, but people out here working for y'all, man.
Absolutely.
Just keep your mind right and stay steadfast in that.
Absolutely. You're not forgotten about. So, yeah, thanks again for coming. I'm D. Luke. That's Eugene. Guys, remember, this is the Bounce Back Podcast. It is what it is. What's next? That's what you make it. On that note, we out of here. Peace.
Peace.
Bounce back and got a moment when they see you down the